Okay, so let's tackle a huge question today. Is your personality pretty much set in stone, or can you actually change who you are? We're going to dive into the science behind personal transformation.
I mean, think about it. Have you ever wished you were just a little different? Maybe more outgoing at parties, or maybe a bit less anxious when you're under pressure. If you have, you are definitely not alone.
You can probably picture it, right? The shy person who daydreams about being the life of the party, or the hot-tempered person who just wishes they could keep their cool when things get stressful. But are these just wishes, or is that kind of real, lasting change actually possible?
Well, before we can figure out how to change, we have to talk about the biggest barrier. This long-held idea in psychology that maybe we're just wired for life, stuck with the personality we've got.
Yeah, for a long time, you had thinkers like Sigmund Freud who argued that our personality is basically locked in by the time we're 5 years old. And even today, a lot of psychologists agree that our core traits, things like how introverted or agreeable we are, they're surprisingly stable over our entire lives. This creates this powerful assumption, one that can honestly feel like a life sentence, that real change is pretty much impossible.
But, of course, the full picture is way more nuanced than that. To find where the real potential for change is, we've got to dig into that classic debate. Nature versus nurture. What is it that really makes us who we are?
And to get at this, there's this absolutely fascinating story. Just imagine identical twins. They share the exact same DNA, but they were separated at birth and raised in completely different homes, with different families and different environments.
So when these twins finally reconnected as adults, the similarities were just uncanny. They had almost identical scores on personality tests, they had the same hobbies, and get this, they had both married women who had the same first name. It's a pretty powerful argument for just how much our genes influence us.
But here's the really crucial point. Genetics is not the whole story, not even close. Our upbringing, our personal experiences, our culture, all of these things are constantly interacting with our genetic blueprint. So you might be genetically wired to be pretty laid back, but if you're in a super high-stress job for years, that could absolutely make you more short-tempered. It's this constant dance between nature and nurture.
Okay, so if our big core traits are relatively stable, where does change actually happen? Well, the answer comes from a breakthrough idea by the psychologist Carol Dweck, and it completely reframes this whole conversation.
Dweck calls them in-between qualities. Now, these aren't our broad traits like introversion. Think of them as the machinery running underneath the surface, our beliefs, our goals, our coping strategies. And here's the key, the big reveal. These qualities are malleable. They can be changed. This is where our power to change truly lies.
So what are we talking about here specifically? Well, things like your core beliefs about yourself and how the world works, the personal goals that you set for yourself, and the strategies you use to handle stress and challenges. The way I like to think about it is, you might not be able to change the basic hardware of your personality, but you can absolutely upgrade the software.
And as Dweck herself puts it, our beliefs about who we are and how we work aren't just minor details. They are a fundamental core part of our personality.
Let's make this super concrete with something like intelligence. If you believe, deep down, that intelligence is fixed, that you're either smart or you're not, you're probably going to avoid challenges to not risk looking dumb. But if you believe your brain can grow and learn, which, by the way, it can, you're way more likely to seek out challenges and, as a result, actually get smarter. Your belief literally dictates your behavior.
All right, so we've established where change is possible. That's the theory. Now let's get into the how, a real, actionable toolkit for making it happen. The research points to a pretty clear 4-step process. It starts with learning new habits, then actively challenging your own self-beliefs. After that, shifting your focus to your efforts, not some innate ability. And finally, acting the part until it becomes who you are.
First up, habits. Psychologists have found that a lot of the positive traits we admire in other people, like kindness or patience, are often just well-practiced, habitual responses. And this is fantastic news, right? Because habits can be learned. It takes work, for sure, but with enough consistent practice, new behaviors can absolutely become second nature.
Step 2 is all about your mindset, and this one is huge. If you're constantly telling yourself, oh, I'm just an introvert, I can't change, then guess what? You won't. That fixed mindset becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Adopting what's called a growth mindset, the actual belief that you can change, is the absolute non-negotiable first step. Next, we have to change how we talk to ourselves. So instead of praising some innate ability, like saying, I'm so smart, we need to praise the process. Frame it as, wow, I found a really good strategy to solve that. Or, I worked really hard to figure that out. This reinforces the idea that success comes from your effort, which is something you can always control.
And finally, act the part. There's this great story about a psychologist, Christopher Peterson, who knew he was naturally introverted, but he also knew that could hold back his teaching. So he made a conscious decision to act extroverted during his lectures. And over time, that behavior started to feel natural for him, at least in that specific situation. He didn't stop being an introvert, but he learned how to be extroverted when it really counted.
So what does this all add up to? What's the big takeaway here? It's simple, but it is so powerful. You are the architect of your own self.
The really crucial idea to grasp is that this isn't about erasing who you are and trying to become someone else entirely. It's about recognizing that you have real agency. Through your own conscious effort, by challenging your beliefs, by building new habits, you can actively shape and refine the person you already are.
So I'm going to leave you with this thought. We've seen how our beliefs literally create our reality. They guide our actions, and over time, they determine who we become. So the only question left for you is this: what belief about yourself will you choose to change first?